A prince stole his father's kingdom, but when he died, the king wished he had died instead. Before the forest, before the body hanging between heaven and earth, Absalom learned how to steal a kingdom without drawing a sword. He would rise early and stand by the city gate, greeting anyone coming for the king's judgment. He would ask of their troubles, then lament that the king had no one to hear their pleas properly. He often sighed, "Oh, if only I were made judge in the land, I would do everyone justice." When people approached to bow down to him, Absalom would instead stretch out his hand, take hold of them, and kiss them. Through these actions, Absalom slowly stole the hearts of the men of Israel. When he felt the time was right, Absalom asked King David's permission to go to Hebron, claiming he needed to fulfill a vow to Yahweh. David, unaware of the treachery, granted him leave, saying, "Go in peace." But Absalom had already sent secret messengers throughout Israel with a single instruction. "As soon as you hear the sound of the trumpet, then you shall say, 'Absalom is king in Hebron.'" Then a great trumpet blast echoed across the land, and the cry, "Absalom is king," spread rapidly. The conspiracy grew strong, and more people joined Absalom. A messenger reached David, breathlessly reporting, "The hearts of the men of Israel are after Absalom." David instantly recognized the grave danger and commanded his servants, "Arise, let us flee, or else none of us will escape." The king and his entire household left Jerusalem, his head covered in mourning, his feet bare. All the country wept with a loud voice as they passed over the Kidron Brook toward the wilderness. The priests brought the Ark of the Covenant, but David commanded them to return it to the city. "If I find favor in Yahweh's eyes," he said, "he will bring me again and show me both it and his habitation." David continued his ascent of the Mount of Olives, weeping as he went, a profound sorrow etched on his face. As they moved onward, a man named Shimei from Saul's household ran along the hillside opposite them. He cursed David loudly and threw stones at him and his servants, raising dust and insults. David's nephew, Abishai, cried out, "Why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Let me go over and take off his head." But David replied, "Let him alone, and let him curse, for Yahweh has invited him to do so. Perhaps Yahweh will look on the wrong done to me and repay me with good for his cursing today." Meanwhile, in Jerusalem, Absalom sought counsel on how to pursue his father. Ahithophel, David's former trusted counselor, suggested an immediate swift night attack to kill only David. But Hushai, David's loyal spy, advised a different strategy. Gather all Israel for a massive, overwhelming force, with Absalom leading the charge himself. Absalom and his elders chose Hushai's counsel, believing it to be better. Upon hearing this, Ahithophel, whose wise advice had been ignored, returned home in despair. He set his house in order, and then, in his own city, he hanged himself. David gathered his forces for battle, but the people begged him not to lead them personally. They insisted his life was too valuable, worth 10,000 of them. David agreed to remain at the city gate while his army went out to fight. Before they left, David commanded his generals, Joab, Abishai, and Ittai, "Deal gently for my sake with the young man, even with Absalom." The entire army heard the king's heartfelt instruction concerning his son. The battle erupted in the dense forest of Ephraim, a chaotic clash of men and steel. The forest itself devoured more people that day than the sword. Absalom, riding his mule in flight, went under the thick branches of a great oak tree. His head caught in the oak, and he was lifted up, hanging suspended between the sky and the ground. The mule continued on, leaving Absalom helpless. A soldier saw him hanging there and reported it to Joab. Joab immediately demanded, "Why didn't you strike him to the ground? I would have given you silver and a sash." The soldier replied, "Even for 1,000 pieces of silver, I would not touch the king's son." We all heard the king's command to deal gently with him. Joab declared, "I will not waste time with you." He took 3 darts in his hand and thrust them through Absalom's heart while he was still alive, hanging in the oak. Then 10 young men, Joab's armor-bearers, surrounded Absalom and finished killing him. Joab then blew the trumpet, signaling the end of the pursuit, and the battle ceased. They took Absalom's body and cast it into a great pit in the forest, raising a massive heap of stones over it. With the battle over, Joab sent 2 messengers to King David with the news. Ahimaaz, one of the messengers, ran swiftly and outran the Cushite. David waited anxiously between the inner and outer gates of the city, a watchman positioned above. The watchman cried out, "I see a man running alone." David, his heart pounding, said, "If he is alone, he brings good news." Soon, the watchman identified the first runner. The running of the first one is like the running of Ahimaaz. Ahimaaz arrived, bowed before the king, and cried, "All is well." David's voice was tight with apprehension as he asked, "Is it well with the young man Absalom?" Ahimaaz avoided the question, saying only, "When Joab sent your servant, I saw a great tumult, but I don't know what it was." Then the Cushite messenger arrived, bowing before the king. "News from my lord the king," he announced, "for Yahweh has avenged you today of all those who rose up against you." David repeated his urgent question, "Is it well with the young man Absalom?" The Cushite replied with a heavy heart, "May the enemies of my lord the king and all who rise up against you to do you harm be as that young man is." The words struck David like a physical blow. He was deeply moved, his composure shattered. He turned and stumbled towards the room over the city gate, his movements heavy with grief. There, alone, the great king wept uncontrollably. His voice, thick with anguish, broke the silence of the room. The kingdom was saved. The king was broken. "My son Absalom, my son Absalom, if only I had died instead of you."